Welcome back, guys. So, yeah, I originally intended this to be a special video for Halloween, but I kinda didn't have the time for it. I've just started a new job, and I had lots of other stuff going on, so that's kind of been preoccupying my time. I'm so terribly sorry about that. And let's be honest, nothing quite says Christmas like gratuitous violence. At least, I wish I could dish out some violence, especially when I'm shopping and it's surrounded by fucking morons. Now, I considered going down the easy route of either the Silent Hill or the Resident Evil series, but I want to cover those more in depth at a later date, and also, isn't that kind of cliched now? I mean, hasn't every person on YouTube in the universe covered these titles over the season of The Witch? No, not the bloody film! So with that said, I'm going to be covering the often overlooked Splatterhouse series. So let's start where it all began, Splatterhouse 1. Arriving in the arcades in Japan during November of 1998, with the rest of the world getting it in 1989, it was a reasonable success and was eventually ported to the PC Engine and TurboGrafx 16. The game involves two college students, Rick and Jennifer, who I assume are studying parapsychology, travelling to the mansion of Dr. West, which is an obvious H.P. Lovecraft reference, who just so happens to be an expert in the field. It is rumoured that strange experiments took place before he disappeared, which led to his home being dubbed the Splatterhouse. During a thunderstorm, they seek refuge inside the infamous manor. They are immediately besieged by monsters and Jennifer is taken away. Rick awakens in the mansion's dungeon, surviving only due to the powers of the Terror Mask, a sentient Mayan artifact that lends its powers to Rick, who then sets out to rescue Jennifer and escape the mansion. That's a surprisingly awesome plot for what is essentially a very simplistic beat-em-up, although obviously this was only shown visually during the arcade version, whereas the home ports had a little comic strip that came in the box. Now, like I mentioned, the character looks suspiciously like Jason Voorhees, so much so that under fear of any potential lawsuits, the mask is changed drastically for the Western release. Instead of resembling the white hockey mask, it now looks more akin to a dark red kabuki mask. However, to be fair, the mask changes quite a bit through the 3/16-bit games, so yeah. Now, when I called this game simplistic, I didn't mean that in a bad way. I mean, there's nothing wrong with being simple. Just look at Rob. The game plays it safe in the gameplay department. There's no real innovation, but I think what it does very well. Even on the less powerful and violently toned down home port, the game looks dark, oppressive and disgusting. The creature designs are decent, and watching them explode into mush when you kill certain monsters is satisfying. As stated, some of the violence and imagery has been toned down for the Western market, with the major omission being the chapel and the boss within it. We now have a generic darkened room, and the cross part of the creature has been taken out completely, although the organ victory theme upon beating it is still playing, which is really confusing because, well, you wouldn't know you're in a church. Thankfully, the weapons were not taken out, which means you can have endless fun doing this, and this. The game is not without faults, and the controls feel clumsy and unresponsive at times, plus Rick's jump is just a pain to get used to, which makes some of the auto-scrolling levels annoying beyond all hell. Not to mention these spiked balls during the water stages. I fucking hate these bastards! Yet, whenever I get that annoyed with the game, I find myself continuing to play it. There's just enough of a balance between frustration and reward to keep you going. The reward is usually watching monsters explode into a gory mess. Ultimately, it's because as simple as it is, the game is just good fun. It's a fun game that's not without various flaws, and while it does have a certain amount of charm, it's possibly the weakest of the series. But hell, I still really enjoy the pants off of it. That doesn't mean I'd take off the game's pants. That would just be weird and perverted. Unfortunately for Rick, he is unable to save Jennifer. Filled with rage, he does succeed in destroying the house and the evil residing within. The Terror Mask explodes, leaving him truly all alone as the flames rise. Like I said previously, Splatterhouse 1 wasn't the first game in the series I played. No. The first game I played in the series is what I believe to be the best in the series. I'm of course talking about Splatterhouse 2 on the Mega Drive. I had no knowledge of Splatterhouse and surprisingly had never heard of it before, but the fact that this was a sequel had no bearing on my decision to rent it and ultimately purchase it. Just look at the cover.
Clearly it was an import of the American release, but the colours used on the box just burst out and snare your attention like a bear trap. The cover depicts Rick wading through a sea of monsters, wielding a strip of metal piping. Okay, he doesn't actually look like this in the game, like, at all. But come on, this is a fucking awesome cover. Then I turned over the box and saw the in-game screenshots. Couple that together with the plot detailed on the back, and there was no way I was leaving the store without it.
So I got home, I eagerly placed this game into my console, and then I was subjected to this.
This music is awesome! Not only that, but the visuals are wonderfully detailed. With the combination of text and music, it's surprisingly exhilarating. As you can see, Rick is visited in his dreams by the Terror Mask. It somewhat teases him, stating he has a chance to save Jennifer. So, Rick sets out to once again bond with the Mask and discover the secret West Manager, which is conveniently settled behind it, so that he can rescue Jennifer and redeem himself. And I still have no clue what the bloody hell this thing is at the end.
How can you not like that?
The text, the graphics, the animation and the music just create such an incredible atmosphere. With that short intro I was up to speed with the original, and they did it in a way that didn't feel patronising or hand-holding. Plus the music just gets the adrenaline flowing, ready for the nightmarish creatures and hard battles ahead. Now that I'm older, I just find it weird that the sequel would solely be released on the Mega Drive. This never got an arcade release. It's a head-scratcher, but child me definitely wasn't complaining. Rick's journey begins at the ruins of the original mansion, which burnt down at the end of Splatterhouse, and it's here that the graphical improvements can be seen. Already everything has far more detail and looks far more grimy and putrid, and yes, punching enemies into nothing but mushy green pulp is still incredibly satisfying. Hell, even that's better. A lot of the early creatures look similar to some from the original game, but they have seemingly festered and putrefied due to the events of the first game. The gameplay is largely unchanged with the regular punch, crouch kick and slide attack from the original. The weapons also make a welcome return with iron pipes, shotguns, a chainsaw, and many others assisting in the absolute decimation of foes. And yes, it's still violent, even more so than the original's home port. Enemies look far more disgusting this time around, with more variety, with boss monsters looking fantastic, and beautifully revolting designs and deaths. Plus, you might even get your hands on the good old Doctor himself. Before each stage, a short pre-level screen appears with artwork that gives you a rough idea of what horrors await you, complete with a short piece of text from Rick. It helps flesh out the world far more than Splatterhouse 1 ever could. And then there's the music.
Oh boy, the music. It has this wonderful B-movie vibe to it. It does just enough to accentuate all the grimy, disgusting visuals while also giving you the determination to push on. It gives you a bit of an adrenaline rush. It's great. I fucking love this stuff.
This entry still contains the same level of difficulty as Splatterhouse 1. Thankfully, once you learn the attack patterns and placement of enemies, you can just get through most of the stages fine, even if certain enemies still give you grief, like this mushy fly-faced bastard or these jumping purple gorilla fucks. I hate you! Speaking of difficulty, the very last boss is an absolute massive bastard. Make sure you have plenty of controllers spare because it's likely you'll lose a few. Hell, this boss is such a ball ache that it's even broken the calmest of YouTubers.
Oh, piss off.
Like Splatterhouse 1, the second entry in the series is far from perfect, and there's still no real innovation, but its real strengths lie in the brilliant atmosphere, visuals and soundtrack. It's a solid horror title that still looks and plays well.
I love this game, and personally I think it holds up remarkably well.
And with the ultimate evil destroyed, Jennifer and Rick embrace as the mansion sinks into the bottom of the ocean, followed by a jump scare that scared the utter shit out of me as a child.
But it wasn't over. Unbeknownst to Rick and Jennifer, they would be subjected to one more encounter with evil.
Much time has passed since the second installment. Rick and Jennifer have married, they are both pretty damn successful, with Rick especially, and have even had a son named David. After moving into their luxurious mansion, they are unfortunately once again besieged by the forces of evil, and Rick once again has to don the Terror Mask to save his family and drive out these ungodly creatures from inside his home for good.
Now that's admittedly a very good setup once again, and it's all presented very nicely with some live action stills. But there's one thing that has always bugged me. Now, given the experiences these two have had before, why in the blue hell would you ever move into any kind of mansion? I would want to stay as far away from those fucking things as possible. Hell, you know, I'll move into a bungalow, sorry, I'll move into a shed if need be. Anything but a mansion.
Now, while the previous two entries in the series kept it very simple gameplay-wise, with 2 only improving on the original in the visual and audio department, Part 3 is far, far more ambitious. This entry does not adhere to the rules of the original. In fact, this game definitely plays more like a beat-em-up, while still containing the visual look and disgusting enemy types, with combos and power-ups available to you, such as orbs which power up your super meter, allowing Rick to tap into even more powers from the Terror Mask, which is a godsend as some of these enemies take an obnoxiously high number of hits to finally destroy them. Thankfully, weapons are still available to our hero. Unfortunately, like previous entries in the series, if you get hit by an enemy, you drop your weapon. And Rick just falls over in this case. You know, I wouldn't mind so much if it didn't take Rick an absolute eternity to get back up to his bloody feet. Rick, come on, get up, you lazy bastard! You know, this is exactly the reason why Jennifer's dead. Oh shit, was that a bit too soon? Throughout each stage, you are given a set amount of time to complete a goal before the time expires. These mainly consist of saving your family from the creatures inside the mansion. However, if you fail this mission, the game does not actually end, although you will not be able to obtain the best ending. There are 4 endings in total depending on who you manage to save, with the best ending involving the rescue of your family and finally destroying the evil inhabiting your house before ridding yourself of the Terror Mask once and for all. The soundtrack is good, but it doesn't hold a candle to Splatterhouse 2. The graphics are improved upon with better animation and faster movement. However, since the majority of the game takes place inside a mansion, it ends up suffering from the same issues as the very first game. Splatterhouse 2 just managed to mix things up with stages looking much more different from each other.
And that's all I've really got to say about Splatterhouse 3. Honestly, out of all of them, it didn't give a lasting impression on me. Don't get me wrong, it's not a terrible game, it's a pretty good game, I just don't think it's better than Splatterhouse 2. Sure, it's more ambitious, it does more things right, but personally I just feel like the atmosphere is lost somehow. It's very hard to put my finger on it. It's not a bad game, it's a good game, but Splatterhouse 2 is the best in the series.
I'll be the first to admit that it's most likely due to nostalgia, but I honestly feel that Splatterhouse 2 is just the all-round better package. I prefer the level design, the story, the atmosphere, and the music. I even feel that while not as good as Splatterhouse 3, the graphics in 2 just have more charm, and help make the game just look that little bit more gruesome. But all in all, this is a brilliant trilogy of horror games, which really are criminally overlooked. You really owe it to yourself to play through these games at some point. If you're a horror fan, you have to at least give them a go. And no, before you ask, I haven't played the remake, or reboot, or whatever the bloody hell it's classed as. It just never really appealed to me, and I didn't really like the graphical style, or the overtly tongue-in-cheek style the game was going for. Plus, I never really heard anything but a resounding meh from those that played it. Maybe I'll cover it at some point, but I can't really promise anything.
So, have you already played the trilogy? What's your favourite entry in the trilogy? Did you even like the trilogy? Have you played the remootal or bootle, or whatever what the fuck you want to call it? Comment below and let me know, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel for even more content and to hear more of my sexy voice. maybe next time I'll actually prepare something in time for Halloween.